And welcome to this DocumentCloud Add-Ons workshop. My name is Andre Nada. I am part of the team at MuckRock working on DocumentCloud. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. The goal for this session is to help make you as comfortable as possible in terms of approaching your first ever DocumentCloud add-on. It's going to be kind of guide through step by step. Feel free to go ahead and ask questions as we go along. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And I think rather than drag this out for too long, I'm going to pass it off to Sanyan and let him get started.
Thanks, Andre. Nice to meet everyone. If you've been on previous add-ons calls, you might remember me. I'm the open source fellow here at DocumentCloud, kind of working on add-ons and getting folks kind of interested and empowered in developing their own DocumentCloud add-ons and seeing all the powerful features that DocumentCloud already has to offer and trying to expand on that. I'm going to turn on my screen share real quick, and then we can hop in. Okay, so I dropped some links in the chat. If you don't remember where every link is, that's okay, because I'm going to walk you through how to find it. If you go to github.com/MuckRock, you'll see a lot of open source code for various different things related to DocumentCloud. You should see either on the pinned or if you find in find a repository, if you type in hello, you'll find the DocumentCloud Hello World add-on. This is a public template that anyone can use to clone and go ahead and start developing their own add-on. So in this case, when you get to this page, you'll see various different files. If you don't remember the link to the add-on documentation, it is here as well. This provides more like of a deep dive into each individual file. So like if you run through and go into config.yaml or main.py, requirements.txt, and so on and so forth, talks about the workflow. All of that is also available in the documentation. There will be another YouTube video besides this recording that kind of dives into starting your own to start writing your own DocumentCloud add-on. That'll be available as well on the MuckRock website. So when we get to this template, if we go to use this template and click create a new repository, you'll be able to clone all the auto-generated files, which will allow you to get started with developing your own add-on. So in this case, I'm just going to give it a repository name. Make it something meaningful for you. Do know that this isn't the name of the add-on when you go ahead and run it in DocumentCloud. I'll show you how to set that in just a second. But do make it something that you'll remember how to find in case you have a lot of repositories on your own GitHub account. So I guess I should have done a precursor. This is assuming you've already been plugged into GitHub before. If you do need to sign up for an account, in the YouTube video that I'll be posting later, it does show you how to sign up with a GitHub account. This is also assuming you already have a DocumentCloud account. If you need help or assistance getting onboarded to DocumentCloud, I'm available for appointments related to that, and I'll drop my Calendly in the chat shortly. But from there, you can go ahead and give your repository a meaningful name. In this case, I'm just making it like a test add-on because I'm not going to be implementing any real features at this time. But I want to show you what that kind of looks like on the UI side as I modify things in the add-on. You can give it a description. This is a so this is important. You can make the add-on public. If you do intend on having your add-on at some point added to MuckRock/DocumentCloud's public library of accessible add-ons, meaning If I go into DocumentCloud and I click on add-ons and I click on browse all add-ons, if you want it to appear in this search field for other users to be able to use, you will at some point have to make the add-on public, and it will have to go through a code review. If you're just testing the add-on for your own personal use and kind of getting used to working with DocumentCloud add-ons and GitHub Actions, you might consider making it private. The other thing to note is if you have like print statements in your code for testing, or you have public log information, or you're receiving errors that expose like names of documents that you have on your DocumentCloud account that you don't necessarily want to be public, you might consider making your add-on private. The reason why is in GitHub Actions, the error logs are public in a public repository, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second and what that kind of means, and why you might want to consider making it private, at least initially. In this case, I'm not too worried about it, so I'm going to go ahead and make it public, and then I'll hit create repository. What that'll allow me to do is it'll generate the repository for me. It'll give me a second. All right. And so now I'm viewing the GitHub repository that includes a lot of different files. At first, you might want to consider like editing your README file, changing the name of the add-on away from just like DocumentCloud Hello World add-on and the title of your actual add-on here. I do recommend folks to keep the first two lines the same, especially the line linking to the add-on documentation. This is in the case that someone decides to modify your code in the future, or fork it, or kind of expand on a feature set that you've already implemented. If they need reference to the add-on documentation, they don't have to go hunting for it. It'll just be included in the README file. It's helpful for other developers. So yeah, you can go ahead and edit the README file, of course, by using the pencil mark. And then you can make edits as needed. In this case, I'm just going to make one simple edit, just changing it to test add-on. And then I'm going to make a commit. Do give your commits a meaningful title. If you're making a lot of commits, I tend to make like, I don't like to make big changes for each commit. I like to make progressive changes. But what that means is if you're trying to go, like let's say you broke something and you're trying to go back in your commit history, if you don't make meaningful messages in your commit history, it'll be harder to find like where exactly in your history you need to go back to. So I always like to make like a meaningful title at least, if not an extended description. So in this case, I'm just going to say modify the name of the add-on in the README file. And then, of course, if you had different branches, for the sake of this, training, I'm not going to dive too deeply into like the purposes of having like a develop branch and a main branch. But what that allows you to do is kind of like if you're trying to implement new features, but you don't want to impact what's live on that particular branch in DocumentCloud, you could create a new branch and kind of host code in there while you're testing, and then merge it into main using a pull request later. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to commit directly to main. So what that means is when I make this change, it'll go live into the GitHub repository and will be reflected on DocumentCloud when I connect the DocumentCloud GitHub app real shortly. So if I go ahead and commit changes, then we'll commit that change. Now I did mention the DocumentCloud GitHub app. The way to find that is if you go ahead and click into the documentation here, and you scroll on the right side, you see run your add-on in DocumentCloud. If you click on that, it'll jump you to the subsection. This is the section where you'll need to install the DocumentCloud GitHub app. If you click on this link here, it'll direct you there. In this case, I've already installed it on my GitHub account, but it would prompt you to have like an install here. I can go ahead and configure. So if I already set up the app on my end, I can change like which organization or which repository it has access to. In this case, I'll click on my own personal user account. And this is really important. When you first install the GitHub app, it'll prompt you to ask if you want to give it access to all of your repositories or only select repositories. I highly encourage to only select repositories. In this case, in particular, the add-ons that you're interested in actually running on DocumentCloud. The reason why is if you select all repositories on DocumentCloud's backend here, I can actually see like which repositories you've granted us access to. And I don't want to see like, 20 repositories that have nothing to do with DocumentCloud add-ons on our back end. And also it's just not good security practice because it does give us access to actions and metadata and our access to read and write access to those repositories on our end. So again, do make sure that you only select repositories. In this case, I went ahead and added the test add-on. So if I didn't add this, you wouldn't actually be able to see the add-on on your own DocumentCloud account when you go ahead and search for it. So if I search for it here, you won't see it yet because I haven't granted it access through the app yet. But once I do, and I hit save, and I give it a couple seconds, I'll be able to actually search for that add-on through browse. So let's see if it's updated already. Yes. So you'll see that despite me changing the name of the title in the README file and the repository name was test add-on, it's still labeled hello world, like the hello world template, because I actually haven't adjusted the user interface yet. So in this case, you'll see now you can actually see the add-on that I just connected to the GitHub app. If I want to change the title to this, we'll dive into modifying the user interface. So if I go into test add-on, and to modify features of the user interface as you view them on DocumentCloud, you'll want to go into the config.yaml file. Here you'll see a couple different things. You'll see title. Title will be the actual name of the add-on. So if I go ahead and edit that, description, if I go back into DocumentCloud and I go to browse, I'll show you what that is. Description is this description here. So if I wanted to edit that, and if I wanted to, so documents, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about this. If your add-on doesn't work on DocumentCloud documents, like let's say it works with like users on DocumentCloud, or it only works on like annotations or not annotations because that still works with documents, but if it works on users or organizations or something like that, you might not need to run the document on any or the add-on on any documents. In that case, you can specify a null set. You can run it only on queried documents. In this case, what that means is if I hop over to DocumentCloud, query documents is your current search. So in this case, it would be 3,164 documents. You can run it on selected documents. What that means is if you actually manually go into DocumentCloud and select each document and then select the add-on to run, it'll only run on these 3 documents here. Do know that that's a limit of 25 because once you go into the cursor page, you can't have more selected. Or you could have the add-on run on either query documents or selected documents. That gives the option to the user to be able to run it on either the larger set of documents in query or only on the selected documents. Okay, so properties. Properties are fields in the user interface when you actually run the add-on that kind of determine like what kind of user input you're getting from the users of your add-on. So in this case, it's just getting a name and a string. When I access it, and I'll show you how to do that in main.py shortly, you'll access it by this name. But this is the name of the field when you actually run it within DocumentCloud. So let me show you what that looks like in a second. Go back. So here you'll see the name of the field is listed here. If I were to change that, I can go ahead and change that here. Like I can change it to something like username. And then of course it gives you a type. So you can make it a string, you can make it Boolean, so on and so forth. So in this case, it's expecting a string. Do you note when you make changes to config.yaml, if I go back into the test add-on repository and I go to workflows, it will run this workflow file here, which will trigger an action to go ahead and update the user interface. So I'll show you, let me actually refresh because I have to refresh. And you see that I changed the title. So now the title of the add-on has changed. And of course, the field username has changed as well. And because I didn't make a selection, it only gives me the option to run it against the query documents. But you'll see here, now I can select if I want to run it on one currently selected document or the larger subset of query documents. Do note one other thing. Each DocumentCloud add-on that you run in the upper right-hand corner, it'll link to the GitHub repository. Okay, now let's go back. I can go back to config.yaml. Let me show you an example one from another add-on that I developed to show you kind of what that looks like. So this is an add-on that I made really quickly the other day. I had a test case where like someone ran the Hello World add-on, which actually makes an annotation on each document. They ran it on a large project, and I needed a quick way to delete annotations en masse from a set of documents. So in this case, I didn't actually have any properties. So I didn't need any user input when you went ahead and ran the DocumentCloud add-on, but I did want the ability to run it on a larger set. So I provided that they could run it on query, or in this case, selected, because I wanted to test the add-on. So if you wanted to have like an empty set for properties, you could do that as well, and it would be listed like this. Let me show you one more config on the Internet Export add-on. So in this case, if you have a field or a property that you want to have required, meaning like your add-on kind of depends on that field being present, you can list it as required within the YAML file, and this is how you do so. And what that allows you to do is instead of like receiving a bug if or an error code when that field isn't present, like, oh, you might get an error that's saying like that field is none. It will throw an error when you actually try to run the add-on, or when the user tries to run the add-on saying, I need this field is required. And I'll show you what that looks like in 1 second. When I go ahead and click on Internet Archive Export Tool. And then like if I were to try to dispatch this currently, without having anything in this field, it'll give me this error saying it should have required this property. So it'll say, instead of allowing the user to run and then them receiving a failure, it'll just tell them right away that they need to fill in that field. So that's config.
Can I jump in for a second and
Yeah, what's
make
up,
sure
Connor?
that we tackle this question that's in the chat?
Oh,
There's
sorry, I
one.
didn't see the chat. Yeah, I'm
No,
like
no,
in
it's good.
yeah. What's the
So
question?
the question from Gregory is, can you clarify if you needed to take an action besides navigating into the GitHub workflows directory to prompt the action to run? I think Mitch wrote an answer, but I wanted to make sure that we got it on the recording as well. He wrote and said you actually run the add-on from the DocumentCloud interface, and that the .github /workflows directory is for configuration of the action.
Correct. That's correct.
Greg, could you let us know if that answers your question, or if you have additional clarification you need?
No, that's good. It just shows that I have a lot to learn about the GitHub Actions workflows. So I appreciate the guidance.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll dive a little bit into that as well here in a second. So we've configured some of the user interface. Let's say I'm done setting the fields that are required from the functionality of my add-on. Next, I'll want to jump into like main.py. This might be closely correlated to requirements.txt. Let me show you what I mean by that. So when I go into main.py, here at the very top, of course, I can import any Python libraries, whether within Python or that are external. In this case, like if I don't know, if I wanted to like import requests, this is where I would do so. Or if I wanted to import external libraries like an Internet Archive tool, I could do so here. Import, upload. So in this case, if you are referencing an external library here, you will want to go back, leave. I'm not going to actually commit those changes. You'll want to leave. And in this case, like if I'm including an external library, let's say it's Internet Archive, I will want to go into requirements.txt and add it as an additional line here. This guarantees that when the workflow is run, when you hit dispatch on DocumentCloud, it will run through this requirements.txt file, and pip will install that library, so you don't get an error. Like if you don't include this in the requirements.txt file and you try to import it in main, you'll get an error saying that like that module isn't available. So do note that you'll need to include external libraries in requirements.txt as well once you have that listed in main.py. If I want to, I can dive into some of the functionality real quick with the Hello World add-on, and I'm gonna dive into the Internet Archive one too. Let me branch that over here. So in this case, like I listed Internet Archive, and that's an external one. If you look at my requirements.txt, I had to include it here as well. So the documentation also lists this too. So if you wanted to, let me go back there to. There's a couple different user interface features that you can access from main.py as well. So let me show you what that kind of looks like. You have the ability to set a progress bar, which indicates to your user like how far along in the add-on run they're currently at. You can set a message to the user saying what the add-on is currently doing. You have the ability to upload a file or send an email after the add-on run is complete. This is particularly useful if you're like having an add-on run that could take a couple hours and like the user just wants to run the add-on, kind of forget about it, step away from their computer, and then they get an email notification saying it was complete. Those are all different things that you can utilize in your add-on. In the Hello World add-on, it uses, let's see here, it gives you a set message. And it also has an upload file, and it sends an email as well. So if I run that add-on, I'll show you real quick what that looks like. I'm going to run it on like a single document here. I'm just going to say, I'm going to go ahead and dispatch that add-on, and what this will do, this is a good intro to kind of the action section. So it'll go in queued status, then it'll go into in progress, and then it'll either succeed or fail. And I'll show you what that looks like. If you click on the actions tab of the add-on repository, it'll actually show you the individual workflow runs. So in this case, this one is the one that's currently in progress. And it already completed, but if it was running a little bit longer, you'll be able to see like which section of the workflow it's currently in. So if you did modify the standard workflow to do something like set up a cache or install like more libraries, it might take a little longer. The dependencies are listed here. So when we talk about the, let's see, I actually didn't add an additional dependency in the requirements.txt, but that would be listed here. As you can see, pip is installing the dependencies. And then it will go into run add-on, and then it'll have some post-action runs as well. You can see that this one succeeded. I'll show you what a failure looks like as well. So if I go into Internet Archive and I go into Actions and I go into like a failed job, I can click on the failed job. And if I click once more here, you'll be able to see actually it'll provide an error message. And when I told you earlier to be mindful of like a public or private repository when testing your add-on, this is a really good use case. So in this case, I'm not really worried about it because this is a document that's I've already made public on DocumentCloud. But if it was like a private document, it does expose the name and S3 URL to a document that I had run this add-on on. If I had other like print statements or logging or something like that, it could expose more sensitive information in the workflow run logs here. This is what like a failure looks like. It does provide you like error information where you might be able to debug. Any questions kind of about like a successful going into actions, looking at your workflow runs, looking at a successful or a non-successful run for the logs? Andre, you'll have to tell me because I can't look at the chat.
I'm seeing nothing in the chat right now.
Great. All right. So I ran that add-on. Let's see. And the upload file, it presents to the user as a download. So in this case, it set an end message when the add-on completed, and then it had an upload. So if I go ahead and click that, this is the file it generated within the add-on. So hello world, and it provided it for the user to be able to download. This is what that functionality allows you to do. If I went ahead and went into my email, you'll be able to see that it sent me an email as well. This sends an email to the user that ran the add-on. What else? If you wanted to iterate through documents, whether it be queried or selected, you can go ahead and use just keep this line of code here. This is useful if you're doing like a mass set of actions across a large subset of documents. If you wanted to access annotations, you could go ahead and access annotations. There's other subsets besides create. This is where I think linking to, I dropped it in the Zoom chat as well, but linking to the Python wrapper documentation. So if I go here and I go to annotations, you can see that there's other things that I can do. I can get all the annotations. I can list. It gives me returns a list of all the annotations in the document. I can go ahead and delete particular documents. So if I go ahead and go into, let's see, do I still have that one up in the mass delete? You'll see that I used that when I wrote this quick little add-on. So I went ahead and used the delete method to go ahead and run through all the annotations in a set document and deleted them. But yeah, anything that's currently implemented in the either a Python wrapper for the DocumentCloud API or in the API documentation that doesn't necessarily have a wrapper function yet is accessible via the add-on as well.
You do have another question going back to
What's
the
the
error
question?
message.
Mhm.
Was that error message from error handling in main.py or the job itself noting where the run broke?
That was like an error in implementation. So that was actually the workflow telling me like, hey, this is main.py failed at this particular line in the main.py file. So let me drop back into that and show you. So in this case, it was running, and it tells me this was an HTTP error that I didn't handle. And in this case, in this particular case, it was an error because Internet Archive has particular rules for their item names. And if it doesn't follow a regular expression that follows this format, it'll throw you an error. Also, if the item name, basically items in Internet Archive, this is kind of a side discussion, but item names in Internet Archive have to be unique. So if it's not unique, it'll also throw this error. So in this case, I had to add like the document ID to the end of an item name to make sure that item names were unique when users were running this add-on in particular. So this was before I implemented some error handling in the code. Does that answer your question?
I think it has answered the question.
Okay, awesome. So we've dove a little bit into looking at action runs, some of the features that you can use in main.py. A couple other things that you might want to consider is if I go into workflows, I did kind of already glance at like update config, which of course changes the user interface side whenever you make changes in the config.yaml. The other one is the actual run add-on YAML file. For the most part, you'll largely keep this the same. The two caveats that I'm going to mention is if you have an add-on that is particularly it takes a long time to run across a large set of documents, you might want to consider bumping the timeout. What this means is in DocumentCloud add-ons, the standard add-on runtime is 5 minutes by default. That's listed in the in this workflow template that's listed here. If you wanted to have your add-on run for longer than 5 minutes, you could. The max is 6 hours or about 360 minutes, give or take. That's a hard limit set by GitHub Actions. You can add a custom timeout, and I'll show you how to do that in this repository. I go into here and I go on run add-on, you'll see if you include with and then set timeout. In this case, I set the timeout for this particular add-on to be 60 minutes. So if I did have some functionality that like I was starting to receive failures because it timed out, I might consider bumping the timeout to be a little higher. So that is a failure that you can see when you go ahead and run the action. It will show you like a workflow failure It won't show you an error that's like listed from like within error handling within the Python file. It'll be an actual workflow failure. The other caveat is if you have like you're accessing an external API. In this case, for the Internet Archive one, I was actually using the Internet Archive API, and that required me to use like to generate a like a token file. And in this case, I needed to provide my username and password to generate that token file. I can't suggest this strongly enough to never put an API key or password, or really even a username or sensitive personally identifying information within your Python code. The appropriate way of handling this in GitHub and GitHub Actions is to create secrets. Because once you've like included an API key or a password or something like that within a GitHub repository, it is extremely difficult to get rid of it. It is almost better to just to nuke the entire repository and delete the entire repository if you've done something like that. The appropriate way, of course, is to create a secret. To reference the secret, this is how you do that within the run add-on YAML file. Workflows, the run add-on workflow has two secrets available to you, token and key. So if you didn't have, like, if you're running two different APIs, or you need to provide a username and a password, you can store one in token and one in key. If you do find that you need to access more than two secrets for some reason, feel free to either contact DocumentCloud or me or Mitch directly, and I can edit the generalized workflow file to try to add more secrets availability. But for now, two has been kind of enough for most use cases. And so this is how you reference it from the YAML file. But to actually create the secret, you go ahead and go into settings. You go down to secrets. You go to actions, and then you'd create a new repository secret. And then you give it a secret name. This is what you can reference it within your YAML file, and then the value of the secret here. This is not exposed publicly. So in this case, I had one for the Internet Archive password and the Internet Archive username. And if I go back and I go into workflows and I go into not update config, the run add-on YAML, you'll see that I access the secrets like this, username and password. Additionally, you'll have to actually, if you need to use the API key within your Python file, you'll have to reference it in there as well. So let me show you what that looks like. In here, you'll have to import OS because it is an OS environment variable. And this is how you would access it within your Python code. So in this case, you'd call os.environ, and you'd call it on token or key, and that's how you'd reference those particular secrets. So once you've created them, you have to reference them in your run add-on YAML, and you would have to access them by importing OS and also calling os.environ for the token or key within your Python file as well. And then from there, of course, in this case, I just call a command line tool to go ahead and generate the Internet Archive token file that is required for me to use the Internet Archive API. But yeah, so that's how you create a secret, how you reference the secret from within the run add-on workflow file, and how to reference it within your Python code. Let me see what else. Any questions so far on secrets or timeout or anything like that? Andre, you see any?
I see none in the chat. Um,
Great. Okay, so far we've run through kind of cloning the template, the generalized template, editing the user interface, talking about some of the implementation. One other thing that I should mention, so you have a field within your user interface and you wanted to access it from within your main.py. To do that, I'll show you an example within the Internet Archive. If I go to my main.py here, in the Internet Archive add-on, there's the item name, which is a field in the config.yaml file. And this is how you would access that. So you do self.data and then open bracket, parentheses, item name, and then close bracket as well. So that's how you would access that and store it as a local variable within main.py. I just wanted to make sure to iterate that as well. So we talked about editing the user interface, accessing the fields from the user interface within main.py, how to iterate through documents, exporting external libraries and making sure to include them in requirements.txt. We talked a little bit about editing the workflow, talked a little bit about secrets. The last thing that I kind of want to cover is just testing. So I did show you earlier how to go ahead and connect the DocumentCloud GitHub app. That allows you to actually run the document from within GitHub itself. There is the option to additionally or alternatively run the add-on via the command line interface. That does have some limitations that are listed in the documentation. Let me hop into there actually and show you what that is. No. So these particular so set progress, set message, and upload file, when you run it via the command line interface, these don't do anything because you're not actually running it from within DocumentCloud. There's nothing to display to the user because you're running it from the command line interface. Speaking of the command line interface, if you did want to go ahead and run it from command line, you would need to provide a few arguments. In this case, you would have to provide either your DocumentCloud username using -- username and password, or you can set your environment variables, making sure to set DC username and DC password. That way you don't have to explicitly call your username and password each time that you run the main.py file. And then this is kind of what that would look like. You could provide documents to run against the add-on by doing -- documents and then listing the document DocumentCloud ID. And then if you did have additional fields, this is how you would present that. So fields, by field, I mean properties that are in your config.yaml file. This is how you provide that as well. If you did, instead of doing like a selection, you wanted to run it against the query of documents, you could use -- query and then provide a string to run against. Do be careful. Like if your subset is particularly large and you're running it through the command line, it might fail, especially if you haven't bumped your timeout yet. But that is how you would go ahead and test through the command line. Of course, if you already set up the DocumentCloud GitHub app, you can run it through DocumentCloud itself. And then if you did have a success or failure, you could, of course, go to view source, go into actions, and see if it succeeded and see the logs, or if it had a failure, you could see what it was complaining about in the failure. Any questions about kind of running it through the command line or running it through the DocumentCloud interface? Hearing none.
I don't see any. Yeah.
All right, hearing none. Do we have any like general questions? Kind of like what are other add-ons, or kind of like what kind of use cases we might work, what might be useful for implementing a DocumentCloud add-on? Kind of maybe I could demo some of the stuff that we have worked on in the past. Some things that might be useful to turn into an add-on. Any questions or any comments in general?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to go ahead and ask those questions. I am not currently seeing the gallery view. So if you just want to unmute yourself and ask any questions, please feel free.
And just to explicitly outline like how the config.yaml turns into the user interface, I kind of this is like the most helpful diagram I've made for that. So like title changes the actual title of the add-on, description, the properties that are available, and then documents. I've just kind of this visualization kind of helps me remember that. So if you did want to take a screenshot of this, you totally could. Otherwise, I can take the last like 10 minutes to kind of just dive into some add-ons that we have been working on, and kind of some of the other API features that might be useful to use in an add-on, if there are no comments or questions at this time. All right, seeing none, I'll just hop into some of the add-ons that kind of been working on already, and kind of maybe give some inspiration to things that are possible. Oh, the last thing is, of course, if you do have any questions, the documentation is really helpful. I did forget one thing actually in config.yaml too, that Mitch provided last time, that isn't in the template. The last thing is, if you did want to schedule add-on runs, there is the option in your config.yaml to provide event options. You can create an event name, so like list it here, and then you can either run it on hourly, daily, or weekly. In the future, it's currently not in production, but there is the ability to run your add-on on uploaded documents. So you could run the add-on each time a document was uploaded. This particularly could be useful if you don't want to like sit in the background and run the add-on on newly uploaded documents within a specific time frame. Of course, it's like 360 minutes for the add-on run, but like if you were uploading documents and you wanted it to be run on each one that you were currently uploading, you could specify that in the event options that's listed in the documentation as well. Yeah. Besides that, I can hop into some of the repositories that I'm kind of working on currently. If I go on here, of course, I did the Internet Archive export. We are working kind of like on a GPT-3, which is an artificial intelligence tool that kind of allows you to give a generalized prompt, and it tries to infer using artificial intelligence models like what you're trying to have it do. And that's an add-on that we're kind of working on at this moment. The Whisper add-on is kind of an add-on that allows you to transcribe audio from either audio or video files into a transcript that is then uploaded to DocumentCloud. Bad redactions, of course, we've mentioned in the past. Personally, identifying information detector might inspire some. So if I go into the main.py here, what this allows you to do is provided a document or a set of documents, it'll run through the set of documents and actually list potentially personally identifying information in the document. Something neat about this add-on is that it uses a positions file. So within the API, there is a positions JSON file that shows you based on each page in the document, what the position of each word in the document is. Now this is reliant on the optical character recognition of that's present, that when you uploaded the document, whether you manually selected it to run through Tesseract, or for premium users, now we gave the option to have you run it against Amazon's TextRact OCR. It is reliant on how good the OCR is for that, the generation of that positions file. But you can, say, for example, get the coordinates for a word in a file. And if you wanted to do something in particular for that word, like redact it or create an annotation there, or you know, if it matches a particular pattern, you could have it like you could get the coordinates for that word in the file. That is something to look into as something useful for developing add-ons, is the positions JSON file. Yeah. Any questions kind of about add-ons that are currently out there already, or the position file, or anything else in the documentation that kind of stands out that anyone might have a question about?
I had one quick question.
Yeah.
Was wondering, I understand that there is possibly an add-on that will monitor a particular URL for changes. Is
Mhm.
that in the add-on infrastructure?
Yeah, so there's the scraper add-on, which does you can set it to schedule to run like weekly or hourly or so on. And it will try to detect like if a new document was uploaded to that page. There are limitations, of course, to the scraper add-on. For example, web pages that are let's say here, actually, let me run into the scraper add-on and show you like some of the failures that do occur sometimes. There are going to be some modifications that should lower some of the failure rate. I don't know if this one might be it, but let me show you. There are websites that have like so this is a very common error for the scraper add-on. There are websites that have countermeasures to scraping that make it difficult for automation or machines to detect changes, or automatically download files, or so on and so forth. There are countermeasures to those sorts of detections. We've kind of flipped back and forth on whether or not we want to include that into kind of a mainstream implementation, because our thought is like if someone does implement like, hey, we don't want this website to be scraped, like particularly government websites, you know, do we as an organization provide a public tool for users to be able to do that under the MuckRock name? That might not look so great, and especially as we try to consider relationships with like government agencies and stuff like that. The flip side is like, of course, add-ons are community tools, so anybody could develop an add-on that, for example, sets the user agent, which allows you to maybe bypass some of the the prevention measures that websites have in place against scraping. So even though like we might not want to implement it on our end, because add-ons are open source, other folks could hop on and create a better monitoring tool that might not receive as many errors because they have countermeasures built in, or it might use like a headless browser, or like Selenium or something like that. These are all things that are available because it's written in Python. You can kind of implement it on your own, and because it's open source and kind of decentralized in that way, unless you're looking for like a code review, you can totally run an add-on for yourself or others in your organization, and you know, we don't necessarily have to implement that in the generalized scraper. But there are the scraper add-on does allow you to monitor websites for changes. But again, there are the caveats of like websites like this where they have scraping prevention.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other generalized questions? I do notice that we're at the top of the hour, so I just want to be cognizant of others' time as well.
I don't see any additional questions, so I will turn my camera back on. And I will formally go ahead and end the recording and thank everybody, but I will ask other folks to just hang on for a few seconds. But thank you all for attending this afternoon and watching if you're not here.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll